All right, today we're going to be looking at section 3.4, measures of position and outliers. So in this section, our objectives, we're going to determine and interpret z-scores, percentiles, we're going to interpret quartiles, we're going to interpret interquartile range, and then we're going to check a set for outliers. So one of the first definitions we get is z-score. This is going to be very important. I think coming up in chapter 6, specifically, when we start talking about a normal distribution, I think it's chapter 6. But how you compute a z-score is you're going to take a specific observation value, you're going to subtract the mean from it, and you're going to divide by the standard deviation. So you need to know the mean and the standard deviation, and that's going to give you a z-score. Z-score is telling you the distance that a value is from the mean in terms of the number of standard deviations. So with the empirical rule, we talked about 1, 2, or 3 standard deviations. Well, now we can talk about maybe 1.5 or 1.8 standard deviations above or below the mean. You have the population and you have the sample. Sample is the same calculation. It's just going to be subtracted the sample mean and divided by the sample standard deviation. So here's an example. With the Red Sox, you can kind of look over that. I'll be doing examples when we get to my math lab assignments. Next, we're going to be looking at percentiles. So kth percentile is a value such that k% of the observation are less than that. So we put things in ascending order, and it says P1, for example, will represent bottom 1%, and if they do 99%, well, the other side will be the top 99%. P2 will divide the bottom into the bottom 2%, and then the top 98, and so on. So based on whatever percentile we're looking at, so if I'm looking at 98, P98, that means 98% of the data is below that term. And then you got some problems talking about that. And then we have quartiles. Quartile sounds like quarters. 4 quarters in a dollar, 4 quarters in a football game, basketball game, something like that. So quarters divide a data set into fourths. So you got from the smallest value to the first quartile, that's 25% of the data. And then Q1 to Q2, that's going to be another 25%. Q2 also represents the median. Then you have Q2 to Q3, the third quartile, and that will be 75% of the data. And then you have the largest value, which is going to be 100%, and between the quartile and the top value will be 100% of the data. It's going to be below that. So here's what they have a description in words. How do we find quartiles? We're going to put the data in ascending order from smallest going up to the largest. We're going to find the median. Okay, so when we find the median, that's going to represent the second quartile. The median is going to divide your data set into 2 halves. Okay, so you're going to take the lower half, or the half to the left, and you're going to find the median of the left half. The median of that is going to be the first quartile, and then the median of the upper half is going to be the third quartile. So that's how you would find quartiles. Got some examples here. And then, again, showing that, we'll also can do it with technology, which it'll be the same process that I did with the calculator. Also shows you how to do it with, that I saw, the StatCrunch results. Interquartile range is going to be Q3 minus Q1. So the third quartile minus the first quartile. This represents the middle 50%. This one is going to be a measurement that's going to be resistant to outliers because it's only focused on the middle. So anything on the extreme high end or low end would not affect the interquartile range. And then some examples on how to apply that. And then we start talking about outliers. So outliers are going to be extreme observations, are going to be really, really big or really, really small usually unusual, not typical for the traditional data set. And then here are some ways of checking for outliers. So you find the first and third quartile, you compute the interquartile range, which is subtracting the first from the third, and then it says determine the fences cutoff points. So you're going to take Q1 and you're going to subtract 1.5 times the interquartile range, and anything lower than that would be an outlier. And then you will do Q3 plus 1.5 times the interquartile range, and anything above that, greater than that, would be considered an outlier. So those are what we call fences. Anything outside the fence is going to be an outlier. So here's some examples. This LF means lower fence and UF means upper fence. And then you got some step-by-step directions and tells you refer to section 3.1. Alright, and with that we can jump over to my math lab.